So what the heck is content-based networking if it's supposed to be the number one goal for your B2B podcast? Let's talk goals, and let's talk the number one goal. That should be your top priority for your B2B podcast. You hear that through the podcast mic? It's content-based networking. We define content-based networking as collaborating with ideal buyers, potential referral partners, and industry influencers to build meaningful relationships by creating content together.
I'm sorry, all I heard was blah, blah, blah.
And here are the two pitfalls that we see people make all the time when content-based networking isn't the number one goal for their podcast. One, they're leaving tons of money on the table. And two, they're not making content as good as they could for their ideal audience. We refer to it as a hack, as our cheat code that we figured out here at Sweetfish Media, a way to do one-to-one relationship building while you're doing one-to-many audience building in B2B marketing. Now, notice I said that word together. We all understand content marketing, right? You create content for your audience of your ideal buyers to try and educate them so that they trust you and want to buy from you. But with a B2B podcast, what do you need?
What do you need? What do you need?
You need a guest, right? You need someone to feature. And instead of just featuring people that you think your audience wants to hear from, reach into that audience and feature people from that audience as guests on your podcast.
That was diabolical.
This is where content-based networking comes in. You're still doing content marketing. You're creating content that is going to serve the needs of your ideal buyers that are in your audience. But guess what? While you're doing that one-to-many, you're building one-to-one relationships with the people that your sales team really wants to get to know, really wants an intro to, and would love to be able to talk to.
Talking about whales here.
So the reason we talk about this as a cheat code is not only are you doing one-to-one and one-to-many at the same time, content-based networking allows you to do more effective content marketing. Think about it for a second. If most of the guests that you feature on your B2B podcast are people from the audience that you're trying to reach, you're inviting them in and not just pushing ads at them and saying, hey, listen to the show. You're creating meaningful relationships that your sales team is going to love you for. But guess what? You're making the content better.
How do you like them apps?
Instead of sending an intern to Google top phrases and try and create new content that you and your team think are going to be helpful for your ideal buyers, why not reach into that audience, talk to one of their peers, and let that drive the direction of your content? So that's what we mean when we say your podcast with content-based networking is going to drive more revenue more quickly through the relationships with your guests. And it's also going to make the content so much better. You're basically crowdsourcing your content strategy from the people that your listeners really want to hear from. Their peers.
The snozberries taste like snozberries.
Let's think about another B2B marketing channel, events. Why do most people in whatever industry typically go to events? Is it for our amazing content or the swag bags?
It's a 1-year membership in the Jelly of the Month Club.
No, they want to go and talk to their peers about, what are you doing about this? Have you figured this out? How are you solving this problem?
Well, what are you asking me for? I'm not asking you, I'm telling you.
When you have a podcast that features people who fit your ideal buyer persona as the guest, you're able to facilitate those conversations, ask them those questions. What trends, what challenges, what things are you seeing? How are you coming up with creative solutions? When your audience hears that from their peer that you're featuring as a guest, they think pretty highly of you.
Hail to the king, baby.
For facilitating that conversation that they didn't have to travel to an event for and come back with a bunch of useless swag. They're able to tune in to that conversation on demand whenever they want, walking the dog, doing the dishes.
Satellites, cell phones, the web, the dentist.
Or whatever they're doing, you're delivering that content that is most helpful for them by featuring people that fit your ideal buyer persona as guests on the show. You just happen to be creating relationships with people who could also buy from you at the exact same time.
Oh my God.
If you're not featuring people who fit your buyer persona as the guests on your show, then you're leaving it to your team, your marketing intern, your content team, and the people who are experts in your product or service to try and be experts in the day-to-day of your potential buyers. And you're not. So go find that expert in the audience that you want to serve, pull them to you and feature them, shine a spotlight on them, let them share the things that they're talking about with their peers in one-on-one conversations.
While it remains a burden assiduously avoided, it is not unexpected and thus not beyond a measure of control.
And just to give you a little preface of a theme that you're going to notice throughout this entire course, your B2B podcast should not be about you. It should not be about your brand.
Me too.
Because when we shine the spotlight on ourselves, it's kind of garish. No one likes to see that. But when you make your podcast and the content that comes from it all about the people that you want to feature, who again should be people that fit your buyer persona, the content is better, and you don't have that negative effect of shining the spotlight on yourself. Because when you shine the spotlight on individuals in the community that you want to serve, guess what? There's a halo effect that benefits your brand. And don't forget, implementing content-based networking where you don't just create content for your ideal buyer, but you create content with them is going to allow you to drive revenue more quickly, more easily attributable, and your content is going to be better in the long run as well. Let's talk about driving that quick, easily attributable revenue. Here's the crazy thing. You can have tremendous ROI on your B2B podcast with an audience of one. Let's just say it's your mom.
Most moms use the phone.
Okay, you might think I'm talking crazy. Hang with me for a second. Let's say you launch a podcast for your brand and you're gonna do a weekly show. At the end of a year of a weekly show, you've done 52 interviews. Let's just say most of them were with people who fit your buyer persona. Let's say 40. If you have 40 conversations with decision makers at target accounts that your brand wants to sell to, let's say that a measly 5% of those relationships with very targeted people turn into deals for your brand. You've closed 2 deals. We're doing math on the fly, y'all. Wait, 5%, that's 2. Okay, y'all didn't know this is a math course. Oftentimes in B2B, depending on your ACV, 2 deals could literally offset the entire year of investment for your podcast. And the only one who listened was your mom. I don't know about you, but if that were me, mom's getting a big thank you.
Shh, busy beaming with pride.
I'm talking huge card, oversized stuffed animal, custom photo book of the grandkids, spa gift package, whatever floats your mom's boat. Okay, whatever is gonna make your mom happy, you better deliver it.
You could say that because she's not your mom.
Okay, mom aside, let's think about this for a second. Even if your audience comes much later, if you have featured a decision maker at a target account on your podcast and you have promoted that podcast on LinkedIn, you've turned it into video clips and you've tagged them in those posts, you've built a stage, shown a spotlight on them, let them talk about the things that they care about most, featured them as an expert guest. Do you think that they're not going to have some brand affinity for you and your company? So that's where the short game comes in. Those relationships can map to revenue very quickly. While you're playing the long game of building a brand and using the podcast as a content waterfall to feed all sorts of other marketing channels. All right, maybe we've beaten this to death in this video, but let me summarize. If you're not interviewing ideal buyers on an interview-based content channel that's basically designed for relationship building, you are, 1, leaving massive amounts of potential revenue on the table that comes quickly and is very easily attributable. You're also creating content that's more forced. By interviewing your ideal buyers, the content is going to be better for their peers. All right, now that I've introduced you to content-based networking and beaten you over the head with it, here's something you can do to see if it's actually effective in your scenario. Go to your sales team and ask each rep to give you 3 or 4 stalled deals or accounts that they simply can't crack into.
I'm your huckleberry.
Now, you might not have a podcast yet, which is why you're taking this course. create an email sequence of 3 emails to send to those decision makers that your sales team gives you at accounts they're trying to crack into or trying to re-engage, and say, hey, we're doing an interview series about insert their role, their persona, and ask them, would you want to be featured as an expert guest? I bet you'll get some yeses. And guess what? You don't even have to write the emails. Just go talk to sales, get the list of accounts, get the list of contacts, and right in this video, we've got a framework you can use for those email templates.